guys, it's Kevin in my review for Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. So what Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always essentially about is we center on the character of Autumn, and she is this teenager who is very quiet and not really well respected by really anyone, whether it's her family or anyone like that, and basically one day she realizes that she is in fact pregnant, and very quickly comes to the decision that she does not want anything to do with this baby. She does want an abortion, but because of her state regulations and her not wanting to get parental consent, she basically has to recruit her cousin, and they decide to take this trip to New York where she's going to finally, hopefully, get this procedure done and all that kind of stuff. And basically, you know, we kind of see her go through the struggle to gain to gain this operation, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, I was really excited for this film. You know, when the trailer for this came out, this was one that kind of came out of nowhere for me, and it was a film that I really did not think I was going to be able to see. It looked like a very raw and just a very real portrayal of adolescence and things like that, and it's also a film, though, that I really didn't think I was going to be able to see anytime soon because, you know, it came out literally right when, like, the lockdown happened and the quarantine and whatnot, and because of that, I just figured this was going to be a film that I wasn't going to be able to watch, that was going to get delayed or something like that, but no, it did play in a few indie theaters, and they eventually, of course, you know, closed the theater down. And then they decided that they are, in fact, going to put it on VOD, which I think was absolutely the right decision for a film like this. It's much smaller. It's a film that really wasn't going to gain that much appreciation anyway. This already gives it a much wider following, considering that everyone's home. So I was very eager to finally sit down and watch this one, and oh my god, it absolutely lived up to the hype. This is an incredible film that is probably one of the most raw and authentic portrayals of really what it means to be a young woman in the 20th century, in the 21st century, that I've seen in a very long time, but we're just getting to right now. So I think the one thing to really talk about when it comes to this film, the thing that really makes it as good as it is the acting. You really need some really convincing actors to pull this off, because you need this to feel as real as it possibly can, and thankfully this film absolutely delivers on that front, especially when it comes to its main performer in Sidney Flanigan, who, holy shit, did she blow me away in this movie. I've never really seen her in anything. I don't really think that she's acted before, but after this film, I really hope I do see her again. I really hope this is not the last we see of her, because she is an excellent talent for sure. She's very quiet in this film. You're waiting for her to have that moment where she just kind of explodes, and it doesn't happen because she's very reserved. She's not someone that reacts to a lot of stuff in that way, but she is very much hurting. There's a lot that this character has been through. Autumn is someone who just isn't that well respected by many in her life. It's really just her cousin that's the only person that respects her. And the way that, and because of that, you would think that this character would come off very flat, very boring, because there isn't a lot provided about her. But Flanigan is able to just get you to really understand every single second of what this character is feeling. There wasn't a single scene where I had a hard time trying to figure out, you know, what's really going through Autumn's head at this point. I very much could tell, okay, that's what they're trying to do with her. And a lot of this is actually done without any dialogue, and Flanigan just does such an incredible job with delivering that here. Every emotion from her just feels so natural and real, and I just absolutely love what she did in this film. There's a scene in the doctor's office, you'll know it when you see it especially, it involves a questionnaire. Broke my heart, honestly. I was almost in tears at this scene just because of how real and down-to-earth it felt. It's easily one of the most realistic performances that I have seen in such a long time, and it might just be my favorite performance of the year so far. I honestly think it is. I mean, Elizabeth Moss was amazing in Invisible Man, but I think this is very much surpassed in that way. I loved everything that she was doing in this film, and I can't praise her enough. She's absolutely a star to look out for, and I just love what she did here. But as good as Flanigan is, I think we also should not at all understate the talent of Talia Ryder as well, who plays her cousin Skylar. Again, not an actress. This is not someone I've seen in anything before, and she was also fantastic here. Skylar is someone who accompanies Autumn. There's, again, very little known about her, but just the way that she reacts to things, the constant love and devotion she has towards her cousin, it's just really well realized. And there's actually a really good subplot with Ryder. And the way that she handled it was just amazing. There's one scene in particular where she just did such an incredible job. I was so impressed by what she was doing in this film, and she just did such a great job. And the chemistry between these two, it just feels like such a natural bond. They really do feel like they are cousins in real life. These don't at all feel like actors in that way, and they just did such an incredible job with that. Some of the best chemistry, probably the best chemistry I've seen all year, honestly. I just loved everything about what she was doing here. And, like I said, this is a film that is very contingent upon the talent of its actors and just how well they work together, and thankfully, these two actors are absolutely phenomenal in this movie, and I really do not think this film would be quite as good if it wasn't for the both of them in this. Alright, but with that said, now we're going to get into the directing and the writing here, which is absolutely incredible as well. Eliza Hittman, let's talk about her, because this is a director that she's done quite a few movies before, but I really haven't seen that much from her. I know she, did like an episode of 13 Reasons Why and things like that, but I haven't seen any of her previous films. After this film, I absolutely want to, because I just thought her directing was so well done and honestly really impressive, mainly because it's hard to tell a story like this already. A film that involves abortion and a film that involves some really heavy themes and things like that. And there's a way to do it a lot of the time that comes across very heavy-handed and phony. But Hittman directs this in such a subtle way. The way that she directs this, it feels very subdued. She's doing everything she can to portray this in a realistic light. She's doing everything she can to make this feel natural, to not make this feel like a movie. And that's a really tall task out of a director. You really have to be a real master of your craft to pull it off, and she absolutely nailed it here. I loved what she was able to accomplish when it comes to this film. I thought her directing was just absolutely phenomenal, and I love the way that it was handled, but the writing, I think, is even more impressive in this film, which I will say right now, this film is much different than you probably are expecting it to be. I went into this film really thinking it was going to be one thing, and it's really not that at all. Yes, the film is about abortion and things like that, but I think more than anything, it's about this bond between these two people that is so well balanced in that way and just is so understanding of each other that they don't even need to communicate in the way that you think they do. And that's the one thing that did throw me off at first in this movie. While there is dialogue, there's not a lot of it. There are quite a few scenes in this movie where Skylar and Autumn will be walking around, like, say, to get money or something, and they will not utter a single word to each other. And I was really thrown off by this at first. I didn't really understand what they were trying to do. But then about halfway through the film, this very subtle reveal comes up with Autumn, and I realized exactly what they were doing because it got me to understand the characters. These are characters that have been very deeply hurt. They don't process emotion because of that in the way that you or I do. They've been through a lot, clearly, and they're very strong in that way. And because of that, there's a lot of things that they are concerned about. And they also feel very oppressed in that way, especially when it comes to Autumn, who, like I said, I think the film does a really good job with showing just how oppressed she feels by pretty much everyone. Her parents don't respect her at all. Her mom always feels like, she has some kind of, her mom, she doesn't really have a good relation with. Her father pretty much resents her in that way. Anytime she gets emotional, he just doesn't want anything to do with her. And even the people who, she works with, there's this guy she works with that's, constantly kissing her and her cousin's hand every time they hand him money. It's just, this girl just really can't catch a break. And so having Skylar, this is really the only person that understands her, and they have such a close bond that they don't need need to utter any words to each other. They can just have this unsound relationship. And I thought that was really well portrayed because, again, it's not something that we see a lot of the time in films like this. And I just thought it was really refreshing, honestly. And again, I could see some people being really thrown off by that and think it got very monotonous, and I can understand that, but for me personally, I think it was absolutely the right approach for this film because they wanted to portray it in a way that felt, as uncinematic as possible. They wanted to portray this as a real situation. They wanted to portray it in a way that was subtle, and that's the other thing about this film is that it's much more subtle than you are expecting. The film does have a lot to say about variation of topics when it comes to abortion, when it comes to, the idea of predatory males and things like that, and the way that many of the male characters in this movie, these girls feel very much uncomfortable by. There's one scene especially where, Autumn's on a bus and this guy is just oogling her constantly. They feel very unsafe in this film, but it never feels like the movie is trying to force that down your throat. It feels like it's doing it in a very subtle manner. And in terms of abortion also, the film doesn't really choose you to pick a side. It's not really about that. It's not a film that's for abortion or not for abortion. Yes, obviously, Autumn wants to get an abortion, but it's way more about just this character going on this journey. And you want to go on this journey not because you're for abortion or not, but because you really want this character to, for once, do something that is in her best interest, not do something that other people are controlling her to do in that way. And I think the film just does a really great job with that. What it has to say about someone like Autumn, who is a young woman but isn't very well respected, I think many people are going to relate to, sadly. And I think I think the themes in this film, they just feel very real. I feel like a lot of people go through similar situations in that way, and it really feels like Hittman did her work when it comes to that. Like, she really did a lot of good research into people like Autumn, where abortion is not something that is celebrated, something that is very much looked down upon. I just think was really well researched in that way, and that's something else that I was very impressed by here. And the directions that the film goes in, there were some stuff I really wasn't expecting in terms of the writing, and there's, again, the way they subtly reveal things as well. It's just a really well-written screenplay. The whole film is pretty much seen through Autumn's eyes in that way. And like I said, again, it's not, another reason why it's not really for or against abortion is because the whole film is pretty much seen through the character Autumn's eyes. It never really leaves her. So you see everything the way that she is. And that's why, say, certain characters in this movie are portrayed in the way they are, because that's the way that Autumn sees them. And you really do understand that. And just little things here and there, like the way that she goes about, looking at things, and the way that she'll do certain things, the way that she finds out she doesn't want this baby, I just think is really well done. Something as simple as observing her dad, and her dad calling the dog a slut because the dog is not acting the way that he wants their dog to act in that way. Again, it seems like a weird comparison, but it does a lot, because similar to Autumn and the clearly abusive relationship that she's been in, you really do feel that throughout the film. You really do feel like Autumn is someone that I think a lot of people, like I said, are going to relate to, and I think the film just does a really great job with that here. And again, like I said before, I don't want to spoil anything of what goes down, but there is a subplot with Skylar that I thought was going to go in a really cliched direction. I thought I knew exactly what they were going to do, and they really didn't. It went in a direction that I thought was really important. It had a lot to say about how women are looked at in the 21st century, how, they constantly feel like they are being, how they constantly feel they're being looked upon, and how they often don't have a choice in certain acts that they engage in. I just thought was really well handled in that way. And again, I could see some people thinking that, oh, it's done it's really not done in the way that you think it is. It's very subtle, and I think for even the most cynical people, it's going to get them to maybe change their tune a bit, and I think it says a lot about this film. I really do think if you look into it hard enough, I think you might look at some things in a different light, and I think that's something this film just does a really great job with. It definitely does start a conversation, not in the way that, say, 13 Reasons Why wants to start a conversation. This actually is bringing awareness to things. This actually is doing a good job of fleshing out these issues and not portraying them in, like, the surface level manner that is. Like, no, this is doing a really good job, I think, of honing in on things that you don't really see in these kinds of films, and I really did love the way that was portrayed here. So again, I think that the writing is really excellent in this film. There's a lot of topics this film just sheds on very nicely. When it comes to the cinematography, though, I think this film is very well filmed. There are some truly gorgeous shots in this movie, and again, there's a lot of great visual storytelling here. A lot of the film relies on the visuals, and I think there's just some absolutely gorgeous visuals throughout this film. Just certain things that we see, the way that, certain things are portrayed, I think is really well done. The way, again, especially the scenes with Skylar and Autumn where they're not talking to each other. I think especially those are really well filmed because you really do understand how these characters are feeling, and that really is not just the actors but also the cinematographer's job to portray that in the way it's supposed to be. And I think the cinematography was just really impressive here overall. I really like the way this film was handled. Everything was lit really well and things like that, and just there's a lot of shots in this movie that are definitely are going to stick with you for sure. And then the score in this movie, I really did end up loving quite a bit. I think that it's a very powerful and just really memorable score that definitely has stuck with me since I've seen the film. And the editing, I think this film is very well paced. I will say, at first, I did think that it was a little bit rushed. Her making the decision to get the abortion, it happens relatively quickly, and I wish we could have spent a little bit more time before that. But there's so much that's revealed about her that we don't really need to see it. We just need to see what Autumn is currently going through, that I can't really complain all that much. It's not even really that much of a flaw. I just wish that there was maybe the beginning could have been a little bit better paced. But once they go to New York, once they make the decision to go on this trip, the film absolutely flies from there, and you will find yourself very much locked in, I think, into the story. So overall, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is just such a realistic and raw film that I think is very different from what we normally see from a film like this. It's got two of the best performances of the year in Sidney Flanigan and Talia Ryder. Flanigan especially, I cannot wait to see what she's going to do next. It does have some very uncomfortable subject matter, and I can understand if some people don't want to watch that, especially now during these really tough times. But trust me, if you are looking for a film that is really going to impact you, and you are really searching hard for films, I cannot recommend this one enough. Please do not turn away from this film. I know there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and it's very tough, and we want to watch the easiest stuff possible. But this is absolutely a film you need to gravitate towards. This is absolutely a film that, if you watch it, I think is very much going to stick with you throughout the end of the year, and it's definitely a film that it's definitely made a significant impact on me for a while. It's got a lot to say about abortion. It's got a lot to say about the power of this bond between these two characters. But more than anything, I think it has a lot to say about just being a young woman in the 21st century. What they really do go through, especially our main character, their struggles and things like that, how they're looked down upon, how they're constantly sexualized in that way. I just think is really well done. The subtleties of it all, the way it's all written. This is just overall one of the best films of the year so far, and I'm absolutely going to give Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always overall in A. Oh my god, it feels so good to watch a film this good. I mean, look, there's been a lot of streaming releases I've watched and things like that, and some of them have been really good, but I really missed seeing a film like this that just feels so cinematic. It also makes me mad that I wasn't able to see this in theaters, because this really does feel like a movie that, even though it's great that people are watching it at home, I really do wish people could have seen this in theaters, because I feel like this is just a film that demands to be seen in that way. It's one of those films where you really can't take your eyes off the screen, and I really wish they were able to show it in the way it was supposed to be shown. But either way, guys, in my review, never, rarely, sometimes, always, the most guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts in it. Please check this out if you haven't already. It is of the highest recommendation for sure. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.